Good evening. So, I have to turn this down even though I'd love to keep hearing the stream. It's nice. And I hope you get something out of just enjoying watching the water flow. So it's been about a week since I've done one of these videos, and you know, it's time to get to bed, to kind of wind down, and I haven't done one of these in a while, but I have been thinking about Psalm 91 all week, and I've been pleased to see a lot of people showing up in my social media, are sharing memes or videos or songs having to do with Psalm 91. It's good to know. It's good to hear. And I can tell you that the events of the past couple weeks, and as every day, it's something new that I've been aware of this kind of thing happening for a long time, and I haven't found myself exactly where I want to be, where I've talked about it for years. It's, I'd love to live by the ocean, near a mountain and woods, a place where I can fish and hunt and grow my own food, and pretty much be, I don't want to say off the grid necessarily. I don't want to be totally out of touch with life and the world and a hermit, but I don't like being in this house of cards. So I can want to be there all I want, and maybe I could have insisted upon it, but in all the little turns in my life, I'm not a perfect man by any means, not in word, not in deed, not in thought, not in my heart, all these things. But that's where, through Christ, we're made perfect. In his eyes, he sees us as Christ, as spotless, and he works moving us, changing our act even, unto the perfect, unto perfection, eventually. Not in this lifetime, but in eternity, when it all is rolled up like a curtain, we'll be made like him. And it starts with acknowledging, first of all, how fallen, or that we're fallen. We don't really have an idea of what that even means. How fallen are we? How fallen, how sinful are we? To know the depths of wickedness, to know your own capacity for lawlessness and sin is, there's something Jesus said, and I'll say this again every time I first mention his name. I say, that's not his real name. That's not what they called him then. And anyway, moving on. But as it's written, most people's familiar with the Bible and Jesus, he said to his disciples that he had many things he could tell them, but they couldn't bear it. And I'm sure there's a lot of debate, a lot written on what that is or was. And I think one of the things would be is how sinfulness is, how far we've fallen. Many times he said, "What a wicked and perverse, O wicked and perverse generation, how long must I bear you?" And or something like that. And you think back in olden times, and you think things are worse now, and people weren't maybe as bad back then. They had a pretty well-ordered society from a religious aspect of the occupied Jews at the time, and then the Romans. But the wicked and perverse generation he was talking about was his own people. The unbelief, anyway, I'm getting far afield from where I want to go with this, but I've just been, I need to say that because, especially since I'm broadcasting this in Facebook or social media, I post a lot of different things. There's a reason for that. I know what Facebook is, and I've just felt for a long, long time that you got to keep dancing. Who are you really? What are you? Anyway, that's my business really, but I recognize that for some people, you hear somebody talking about Bible and things like that. First of all, they feel in their own selves, like, I don't want to listen to this right now. It just makes me feel bad about myself or whatnot. Well, that is why we have a Savior, And one thing I would never want to be is a guy in a suit up behind a podium that everyone calls pastor or reverend or something like that, that's unapproachable, or people change their behavior around or anything like that, And so if anything I have to say that is truth or is life or is of the Spirit by the grace of God, it's not me. I'm just allowing myself to be an instrument of His right hand, hopefully, I have an impulse to do this. Where does that come from? Does it come from the destroyer, the stealer, the thief, the killer, Satan? I don't think so, because I don't want your money. I don't want anything from you. I don't want adoration. I don't want anything. Be nice once in a while to know somebody did listen, but, I'm used to not knowing that anyone listens, So I do this for myself too, because this helps me to not just have these thoughts flow through me like these streams. There's tiny little currents all through there, like thoughts in my own mind or my heart, where you can't see them, but they're moving, Just like right now, we can't hear that stream, but for me to start speaking, I'm hearing those own things that kind of are running through me, and they become manifest, like the little white caps and ripples on top of the water. There's evidence that they're really there for my own edification, right? And anyway, back to these times that we're living in, and especially recently, I don't know when this is going to end. Well, it's never going to end. It's just a progression. I don't know when the gravity of what people are experiencing right now with empty shelves and increasing mandates to stay out of public life, to stay behind closed doors, to quit working, to quit going to church, to quit going to the gym, everything, pretty much. Can't go have your surgery, you name it. And I don't know when it's going to end, and I'm wondering that it's going to end, lifted, like sort of abate anytime in the very near future. And that's frightening to think about. But I've wondered, because this is not a, you may go flying out of the back of the wagon here, but this is not an organic thing. This didn't just manifest and the world is reacting the best they can. The quote-unquote leaders are reacting and trying to make prudent decisions. No, this is orchestrated from top to bottom, beginning to end. And if you don't understand that, this video is not about, or audio, however you want to look at it, this is not about explaining that, because it's complex and it involves a lot of history and a lot of evidence, because it's really hard to wrap your mind around it unless it's sort of peeled back layer by layer, and unless there's something in you that resolutely knows, just intuitively knows, you're being shown, let's say, that yes, that is true. This, I can just see through the veneer that this is not, that there's something going on, that is like the whole idea of this pandemic is really a velvet glove, or it's something that, maybe that's not the right words for it. It's a mask, for something else happening. And the world is being broadsided in a way by the powers that shouldn't be, and it's quite it's very dramatic, and it can get more dramatic very, very rapidly. And I'm wondering that because it just seems so very unstable. No matter the control that's causing this, the mechanisms that are causing this, reversing it is not necessarily something that can be done very, real easily. And it makes me wonder if this is not a real. This is not a drill. That's what I'm trying to say. This isn't just a drill. This isn't another trial balloon. This isn't just another push to get certain things in place, and what do you call it? something in Perry, in fencing. I've forgotten the words for it, but like an advance and then a withdrawal. I don't know. And back to wanting to live by the sea with a boat and a little house, maybe that I built from the wood I chopped down, and I really, really wish I would have had that vision for my life when I was 5 and always worked towards it. It would have happened. But that's just not how my life has gone. And along the way, I kind of getting back to where I went off track here. There's where I started talking about not being a perfect man myself, But there are certain things that through the grace and gift of God, He's given me along the way. And for example, one of them is the wisdom to know that in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will direct your paths, And so at critical junctures, and I wish that was true for every word I said and every little thing I did throughout the day, especially as it affects other people, and you name it. But it definitely comes through the things that I've recognized as junctures in my life, a job to take or a place to live or a relationship or whatnot, to really ask the Lord about it, or at least say, look, I'm giving it over to you to help me, make the right choices here or whatnot. And I found it has been true. He's directed my path. However, that path has not been easy, and it makes you question about whether you're being led in the right ways, or you're just imagining that you're hearing something and going the right way, because it turns out to be one of the hardest rows to hoe you could have imagined, and fraught with difficulty. Well, there's a great book called Pilgrim's Progress, very old-time book by Bunyan, and I don't think I ever got through the whole book, but I do know that Charles Spurgeon, who I'm about to read his commentary on Psalm 91 a little bit on these couple of verses, that he references a lot. And, I feel I've read it through, and I probably ought to read it through. I know I've got a copy of it, and I started to read it through, but it's old-timey, and it just, I'm the type of fella that I'll pick up a book, and I maybe can't put it down. Like, I'll plow through that book, like, in 48 hours, or, around there. And there's other books I want to read, I think I should read, and they get tossed around and moved from stem to stern, table to floor, all over the place. I keep trying to take a jab at it. They collect dust for a while. The corners get damaged from falling off the table, and I never seem to get through it, but it's always around. I'm thinking, I got to read that book. It's almost a vexation. I ought to just decide, okay, I'm not reading it and put it away, but I kind of think, I'm going to get to that. I don't, and I don't. My point being is that Pilgrim's Progress is one of those books that's gotten moved around, and it just can't seem to get through it. And nevertheless, the whole point of that is that that's a whole expression in the book's a metaphor, if you will, for the Pilgrim's Progress. And that means you and me as believers, and how the Lord leads, and the way we feel about the things along our path. And it's very colorful, and I hopefully maybe even talking about this gets me to read it right now. But at any rate, this take me forever to kind of get to the little bit of things I want to say. I'm finding that, I'm not at that little piece of paradise I talked about that I thought, that would be great for me. I think that's what I really want. I'd really be at my best and feel I've really achieved something, and I'd like to live closer to nature like that. And, because I found myself not somebody who wants tons of possessions or cares a lot about status and things like that. And maybe that sounds so noble, but that's a hard road, kind of, because most of the world does. Or if they don't, they still are judging you because you're not, in their eyes, so shiny and great or something. And just like the Velveteen Rabbit or whatever, as you get older, you start to not care. You're more secure in your person, if you will, or you recognize what really matters, and what's also meaningful to you. And I'm finding this whole event, like I've made these choices along the way, and it's led me to where I'm not in that place, but I am in a place where my sense of the house of cards we're living in and how easily it can be brought to a halt, to chaos. I mean, we're not that far away from gangs roaming the street if the powers that shouldn't be keep this up for very long. People are going to start to recognize that they've got to rebel. They're going to lose it. Some people are going to lose their minds. There's going to be shooting rampages. There's going to be people being held kidnapped, or people breaking into the city hall and holding guns to the mayors, or I don't know. I'm just thinking there's things like that given the breadth of this crisis and the spectrum of humanity, that is likely to happen in here and there. And then when people run out of food or just go plain batshit stir crazy, excuse my language, but that was probably an appropriate place to put it, they're going to be robbing their neighbor, if some aren't already. And I don't live in a place, I don't live like in a concrete jungle type of city situation, but I'm not out in the country, and I'm not that far from, in a place like where I live, that could happen here, And if it can happen here, it can happen about anywhere. And it makes me wish this happened in the days when I did live in the country. I did have a really nice situation at one point, and we had a generator and a root cellar and 80 acres, and just prepared, in the event of Y2K, back in that time period. And that's all kind of past now, and I'm through all those Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 choices. Here I am in the thick of it, but in the midst of it, I'm having to believe Psalm 91 like never before. It's coming into real reality, and I'm recognizing that it is all about believing and having faith. And I've heard that and known that and felt there's times in my life I've had to have faith for a paycheck, being a commissioned salesperson for a long time, and had to have faith for this, that, or the other thing to happen, and believing in God's forgiveness for my sins and things like this. Like, really had to believe and come out of condemnation for things in my life, and guilt over things I didn't do right, and wrong choices I made in my life, and things unfulfilled, and things you can't really do over again, and I've had to believe, but this is a little different, and I'm not so worried about getting sick. I'm really not. I'm not, but I do have to believe it, because what's to stop me from getting sick? Now, I've done things to kind of keep a robust immune system, but I also am not perfect in keeping my health. I've compromised my own health in many ways. It can be stress. It could be being in front of the computer for days on end without really going to the gym, not sleeping right. Just the list can go on. Okay, different types of, getting on. For example, I don't believe that pasteurized, homogenized milk is really good for you, but I just had a thing for milk here lately, and I got a lot of milk. Is it good for me? It sure tastes like it, but it's probably not very good for me at all. And that may sound really minor, but I'm not here for a confessional, but I'm here to tell you that the only thing keeping me calm about it is that I have to trust and believe the Lord, and I'm appropriating Psalm 91, and I'm encouraging you to do as well, and meditate on it. Think about it every day until you just like you can say a word over and over again. Think about saying the word toothpick, for example. It's toothpick, toothpick, toothpick. Say it 50 times. Pretty soon it's ridiculous. It just doesn't even make sense. Maybe that's not the right word to do that with, but if you've ever done that, you get the idea. And if you meditate on Psalm 91, meaning read it every day. Let the verses come back to you when the fear comes that, oh man, everybody's afraid. Should I be more afraid? Should I be more careful? On that note, I want to tell you a little story. I went to the store today, and a lady, and I'd seen other people doing this, a lady pulls out the cart, they're all stacked up in the little foyer before you go into the store, and she's got out a wet wipe type of thing, and she's wiping it down. Now the woman's a bit heavy set, older, got to be in her 60s, and she's got an older daughter with her, probably in her early 50s. I don't know how that would make their relationship. I mean, maybe they weren't mother-daughter. Maybe they were friends or something. But one of them was older than the other one. They both were not young. They both didn't look very healthy. But the one lady was wiping it down. And maybe it was her daughter. Maybe she did say mom. But at one point, the lady's like, come on, let's get on with it. Because the lady was just wiping down every little piece of metal and plastic on that thing. And part of me wants to run up and tell her, it's all a hoax. What are you doing? Shake your, snap out of it. Think of the movie Airplane. We're all lined up to slap the woman in the seat. But I don't know these people, and I just have to. I want to help them. I want to say, don't be in bondage to this fear. I'm not saying there isn't a flu virus out there or a new strain or something like that, but the fact that you're gonna prevent from getting yourself sick by doing that little ritual, it's a bit mental. So going on, I see her later on in the store, and those, they're like coolers, but they're open on top. They're kind of about waist high, So she's at that cooler. I saw her like blowing her nose, maybe even a sneeze. I don't remember, but she had a tissue now, and she had touching her face and blowing her nose and stuff. And then she's putting her hands all over, like propping herself up and sliding them down the metal cooler edge and handling packages in there. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, the stupidity, like the cognitive dissonance, the disconnect, I even saw a video similar to this just before I went and saw that happen in real life, about a lady. She made a video called Go Ahead and Touch Your Face, or Touch Your Face. It's kind of funny. It's on YouTube. You can probably pull it up. If you're on my social media here, you can find it. Except you probably have to scroll through a lot of stuff. I've been posting like crazy because there's just a lot of. I have thoughts about it, and I just get them out, etch them on something, and give them a little life. Maybe it helps somebody else. I'm not trying to necessarily educate or tell anyone anything, because frankly, most of my connections, I don't really know in real life as far as flesh and blood, face to face. Most of them. A bit unusual. I've gone through different metamorphoses with that. There's a few people that I've known in past lives that I'm connected with, but not that many. And I don't expect to change anyone's mind. I actually, for one thing, it gets something out of my system and I move on. Don't have someone to have it come out with in conversation all the time, or I can call up and say, you know what, I throw it up on the media and or share a meme. But it's to let most of the people I'm connected with, maybe we don't believe everything the same, but I've connected with them through different groups and pages and things. And they already know this stuff, but I know that it gives me a sense of connection, and I hope it does to them, to let them know that they're not alone. And a lot of the people I'm connected with, they're not connected with the other people I'm connected with. So it's a way of getting things circulated, in those groups of people who are. It's a way of edifying one another, It's not about changing their minds or bringing them down. Most of them already know, I'm singing to the choir, preaching to the choir, but it's also good to sing hymns one to another, sort of thing like that. So. Anyway, I'm just saying that this is an opportunity where I think that things are at a level that I'm not going to be. I'm allowing it to change me and do things to purify me in my faith, my belief, drive me deeper, I guess you would say. I feel like I'm made for a time like this, where things are like this, where things are, a bit apocalyptic or Red Dawnish, I just feel I've been, fashioned to where this is an element that I've been made for, because I'm not freaking out and I'm not comfortable. I don't like the idea. I've got a lot of my own personal problems I'm going to have to deal with through this situation. People I care about that maybe aren't taking it the way I am, who are thinking, oh, it'll be over in 2 weeks. I don't want to have to kill anybody, even if they're trying to get through the door, or either to rob, steal, and plunder, or to be, tyrants. I don't really want to die on this hill, I really do want to find my way to that place by a stream like this, by a lake, by an ocean, by some mountainous rainforest, or, well, the temperate deciduous is fine too, whatever, where I can live a little closer to that peace on the mountain, that peace by the river, by the stream. And I don't like having to, I know some people in my life, I don't know what's in their mind, but I've seen their fruits. And it's like the fact that I found a way to work from home on the computer, and they have to go sort of show up and be somewhere at a certain time, and they always talk about their employer as their boss, and it's like they don't really, it's almost like I have a plague, they're not happy for me. It's almost like I've got something, but they also don't know how damn hard it has been or how hard it is. It's just a lot of problems, There's the isolation. There's the fact that you're responsible for you all the time. And you've got to produce for you or nothing's going to happen. And you're the one who fails. It's all you. It's not the guy who doesn't do his job. It's not the guy above you. You got a terrible boss or the, terrible employees. And no, it's just on you, If you don't produce, you don't make money, it's my fault. There's no one to say, you know what, you want to go outside and smoke. Not that I'm not smoking cigarettes, but, you want to take a break, you want to go to lunch. It just doesn't work like that. And I got one friend, it's funny. I call him to maybe go to lunch now and again, and no matter what he's doing, he's like, I'm working. Like, he can't ever take lunch. I'm like, you got to eat. I mean, don't you ever go to lunch? Yeah, but I've got this thing coming up or that thing coming up. I've got today's orientation for this, and I've got to, he goes out of his way to tell me he's working. Now, I'm not making this up, because there was a time when I used to visit him in his home and his little lovely wife. When I was just starting what I'm doing, she would say to me, so Ben, are you working yet? Are you working? So, I go there a month later, go there 6 months later. So you find a job yet? I really wanted to say F you, just F you, lady. I'd already told her what I was doing, but it was just like, it wasn't an insult to think that she played like she wasn't intentionally being insulting, I don't know. It's kind of a complex thing. It kind of hurts my feelers because, I was a friend for a long time, but man, I'm all over the place here. I want to get to Psalm 91, but I'm just saying that all right, well, I guess I'll just leave it there because I don't remember where I got off on that subject exactly, other than the fact that I'm not by that mountain stream. Oh yeah, well, I'm working inside and everything, and it's got its own problems. All right, I probably lost you by now. The video's been going a bit of time, half an hour, and I want to read to you, first of all, Romans 4:20 says, "Strong in faith," and I'm going to read this devotion from this morning. It's very short. Christian, take good care of your faith, for recollect faith is the only way whereby you can obtain blessings. If we want blessings from God, nothing can fetch them down but faith. Prayer cannot draw down answers from God's throne except it be the earnest prayer of the man or woman who believes. Faith is the angelic messenger between the soul and the Lord Jesus in glory. Let that angel be withdrawn. We can neither send up prayer nor receive the answers. Faith is the telegraphic wire which links earth and heaven, on which God's messages of love fly so fast that before we call, he answers. And while we are yet speaking, he hears us. Now think about that. This was written back when the telegraph was sort of new. Now think about, you have garage door openers, TV remotes, and cell phones, texting, calling, satellite TV. Can't see these connections, but they're there. Appropriate that belief about your cell phone. You have faith that you send that text, it's going to get to your friend or family. We need to have what's more real, that or the reality of God, and we're given the gift and desire and the hope of prayer. We should believe it. I'm talking to myself too, right? I don't pray enough. I throw them up, fairly often enough, but I don't really. There's differences in types of prayer. How you pray, right? You know what I'm talking about. But if that telegraphic wire of faith be snapped, how can we receive the promise? Am I in trouble? I can obtain help for trouble by faith. Am I beaten about by the enemy? My soul on her dear refuge leans by faith. Let me read that again. My soul on her dear refuge leans by faith. Refuge is capitalized there. That means the Lord. My soul on our refuge leans by faith. But take faith away, in vain I call to God. There is no road betwixt my soul and heaven. I don't know how people spoke back then, but they definitely wrote in a different than we talk. In the deepest wintertime, faith is a road on which the horses of prayer may travel. Aye, and all the better for the biting frost. But blockade the road, and how can we communicate with the great King? Faith links me with divinity. Faith clothes me with the power of God. Faith engages on my side the omnipotence of Jehovah, or Yahuwah, some people say. Anyway, that's just a aside. Faith ensures every attribute of God in my defense. It helps me to defy the hosts of hell. It makes me march triumphant over the necks of my enemies. But without faith, how can I receive anything of the Lord? Let him that wavereth, who is like the waves of the sea, expect that he will receive anything of God. Let not him that wavereth, who is like a wave on the sea, expect that he will receive anything of God. O then, Christian, watch well thy faith, for with it thou canst win all things, however poor thou art. But without it, thou canst obtain nothing. If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. And again, there's a lot of the that kind of stuffy type language in there, but I think you can overcome that, right? And how many times do we pray and wonder that God hears us or that we're really going to get an answer? I mean, that's sort of us, that we waver, and faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And we can remedy that problem by meditating, by reading. Even if you just read this psalm, every day for a week, your faith will increase. If you read something with Proverbs or some devotion or something with the word of God, it will help your faith. If you say prayers and talk to God, you cannot approach God except you believe that he exists, that you believe. And a prayer is an approach to God. And through Christ, we can come boldly before the throne of grace, right? All right, so thanks for listening to that. I want to share something else, something that happened just the other day. I got an email from somebody in a group I used to belong to at a church, and went out to a bunch of people. And they're just like most churches, I guess, they've canceled their services. Now I quit going there for a while now. And way before there was the virus situation. But I was dismayed driving by this church recently with signs said there'll be canceled services, and then I get this email. Of course, this church now, fairly big church, they're canceling their services, and oh man, I had to kind of write this letter and then kind of go back and edit it, because my first take, it just annoys me. Just annoys me. Anyway, so I'm being one who's a bit indignant about the cowardice I'm seeing with people. Just they're obeying everything, and they're afraid, and they're in bondage to the fear of death. But I wrote an email back to all of them, and I just replied all, and I said, I quoted Luke 18:8. It says, "I tell you that he will avenge them speedily." That's part of the context of this verse, but he says, "Nevertheless, when the Son of Man cometh, shall he find faith on the earth?" ? So even Christ is wondering, when he returns, will he find faith on the earth? What is faith? Well, the Bible says faith is the substance of things unseen. A.W. Tozer said, quote, "A scared world needs a fearless church." I'm continuing on in this email now. Then I quoted entirety of Psalm 91, 1 through 16. It's only got 16 verses. And quoted all Psalm 91. And I just went through and I highlighted and bolded parts of it, So if you're familiar with it at all, if you watched my prior videos, you are. And I'll read it again in a minute. But I highlighted the parts about him delivering us from the noisome pestilence, not being afraid, and it not coming near you, and no evil will befall you, and neither shall any plague come near your dwelling. I highlighted those parts. And then I wrote, people either believe this or they don't. It's really just that simple. I wrote, quote, and this kind of referenced the fact that people are afraid to get together, and, the powers that shouldn't be are telling people not to keep your distance from people, not to gather more than 10, and they're probably lowering those numbers. "Where one or two are gathered in my name, I am with you." And I wrote, he's either with us or he's not. He's either the same today as he was yesterday, or he's not. He touched the lepers then and didn't spread leprosy. And I was thinking about that today in relation to Psalm 91, and walking around today in various crowded places, as crowded as they get these days, I see people, they look afraid. I mean, a lot of people look glum, and you can just see this. They look miserable on their face a lot of times, but there's something else peculiar about them, like they really are afraid. And I've been sick. A few weeks ago, I'd been traveling, and I had a stuffy nose. Who knows? Maybe I had the coronavirus, whatever it is. All right, maybe I had it. Got over it. I don't know. My point being is that I've been sick in my life, many different kinds of things. However, but I believe during this situation, I'm not going to die of this. I'm not going to succumb to this or be afraid. I'm not worried about going out and catching it. Why?
Because and I had this thought today, and I think it's a good one, and I hope you listen this far, because you can take it for your own. I didn't invent it; it just came into my head. You know how the Israelites were in Egypt for 400 years, and the cries of being oppressed and everything rose up into the ears of the Lord, and He finally delivered them through Moses, and He they lived and died during those time. People died. They got sick, or they had to work, and they grew food and cooked food and prepared food and all this during that period. But when He was leading them through and out, leading them out and through the desert and leading them to the promised land, during that time, He fed them with manna. Every day, He fed them. They didn't get any manna when they were in Egypt. And they didn't get any manna after that time was over and they were in the promised land. They weren't getting manna every day. So this time to believe, Psalm 91, that the noisome pestilence, that any disease or thing like that will not come near you is now. Doesn't mean that you never had a virus before in your life. If viruses, by the way, this is completely aside, I don't want to get on this topic. There's some epidemiologists say there aren't even viruses. Everything you've seen about a virus is a graphic illustration. What is a virus? Or is it just someone's immune system being weakened? Or is it being weakened by something else that's not a virus, called a different name? Is it an invention? I don't know. But it doesn't really matter. Let's call it a virus, something that makes you sick, or when you get sick. So you're sick. Well, during that time, it wasn't life-threatening. The world wasn't coming to an end. They didn't shut down school. Maybe you stayed home a couple days, but they didn't shut down the grocery stores and school and keep you from work along with everyone else, keep customers from coming to your work because one person in your town was sick, like today, right? Well, that bondage to fear of death is how people can be manipulated by just propagating the propaganda that this is going to wipe everyone out, like put them in the grave, You know what the real noisome pestilence is? That fear-mongering. And, I think there's some truth in this, maybe a lot of truth. This is where belief comes in, It's a state of mind and heart. And that itself protects you. People who are stressed out and afraid of getting sick, wasn't it Job that the thing that he feared came upon him? Think about that. Do you know what I'm talking about? Job in the Bible, a whole book about it. He had everything. But he always was afraid stuff was going to happen. And finally, the things he feared came upon him. I think there's something to think about in that. So believing isn't just a fantasy. Believing you're not going to get sick isn't a fantasy. There's reality to it. There's things that I don't know how to explain or understand having to do with vibrations and frequencies and things, but there's something to it. And you're raising, if you will, I'm just using figurative language here. You're raising your frequency, if you will, by believing this. By believing that the Lord is going to protect you. Now, this isn't like a self, like you're your own God and you're doing this by believing this little fantasy. No, this is a real relationship with a living God. And it's not a Holy Spirit's not an it. He's a living presence with us, the Comforter, the one who gives us power. He'll give you words on your tongue at the time you need to speak them. He will lead you and guide you. He'll bring to your mind truth. It's been deposited there through the Word of God. It's alive. He is life. And life is the opposite of death, So don't forget there's angels too, right? There's angels. Oh, I never finished the little email here. So I wrote after I said that, Christ was able to go among the lepers and he didn't spread leprosy and things by touching them. I wrote, in 2017, there were an estimated 10 million cases of tuberculosis. And tuberculosis killed over 1.6 million people around the world. And it's a disease that's been around a long time. Was it ever on NPR, Fox, or CNN? This flu has killed less than 100 people in the U.S. in about a month. I have contacts all over the world. And that's true, I do. Okay. And not one person can name someone they know who is actually quote-unquote sick or who has died from this flu. Now, I'm not saying that no one has, but I do know the ones that have died, they've gone out of their way to say, well, these were older people and they had underlying health conditions already. Well, there's also problems with the tests to know if they really have it, what really killed them. The number, it's just iffy. It's all iffy. Being constructed to, it's misleading. That's the words I'm looking for. So this is not to say it's not a real strain of flu, but it is to say Americans are being lied to, hyped, and manipulated about this virus for occulted reasons. I use that word purposely. By occultists, and occulted reasons just means hidden, for obscured reasons. At this point, the fear is the actual virus, I wrote. Then I said, the Lord hasn't given believers a spirit of fear and has delivered such from the bondage to fear of death. And that sentence of my own really is a conglomeration of 2 Timothy 1:7, Hebrews 2:14 and 15. You want to build your faith in that? Read that. Read it out loud. As far as what you personally do, that's your own business. I hope whatever you do it in faith, and that you remain strong and courageous, unlike most of the world around you, and cite Psalm 91, as the promises are not just for David, but all who are his through Christ. And that's the truth, man, because God is no respecter of persons. What he did for David, he will do for you. How do you know? Well, does that mean he's going to make you king of Jerusalem, king of Israel? That he's going to teach you how to use a sling and 5 stones and kill, 10-foot tall giants? Doubtful, but you will have things that you can take victory over and rule over. Let's start, you and I, with our own flesh, okay? And there's giants in your life that you can slay, and the Lord will give us the victory. He will provide the stones. He will also teach us how to aim and shoot, and also to march down in the valley where the giant is and confront him and said, "Who are you, Philistine, to stand against the armies of the living God?" Oh, and I threw a PS on there. Personally, I would never have shuttered a church's doors. All right. Anyway, moving on from that. Last but not least, in fact, the highlighted part of the whole thing is I want to get to Psalm 91. I'm going to read it, 16 verses. I'm just going to read it, and then I'm going to read Spurgeon's commentary on it to you, and then I'm going to say goodnight. The psalm is titled "My Refuge and My Fortress." One moment. Kind of need to put it in a place I can read it where I'm not turning my head to the side. All right. And again, you get used to the old-timey language. I really just don't want to distract myself by trying to mentally edit it and reword it just so doesn't hurt your ears. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord. By the way, what is the secret place? It's that time you spend under the olive tree, meaning with our nose in the book, or something that is meditating on the Lord, whatever that is, and it's fellowshipping with Him, alone, walking in the garden with Him. Could be, anyway, you got to know what it's a secret, right? It's a secret place that you share with you connect with God with, but also through the Word, It's not just a woo-woo thing out like, the forest is where I meet with God, and God's in the forest, and He's in everything, and that's God. Well, that's not what this is talking about exactly. All right, okay, trying to be quicker. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in him will I trust. Not washing your hands, not avoiding people, not cowering inside, right? Verse 3, surely, meaning for sure, for reals, surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shall you trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. And that's what we're doing, Psalm 91. We're making this truth. These are truths. It is truth. That's our shield and buckler. That's to believe